The sky burned red over the planet of Valira. Smoke twisted into the air from cities that once stood proud and tall. Now, most of them were nothing but rubble and broken steel. The sound of explosions shook the ground like giant fists, and the cries of the wounded were carried on the wind. War had come to Valira with a cruelty no one could have imagined, and its people were paying the price. In the midst of the chaos, Lysera moved quickly through the ruins of her home city. Her dark armor was scratched and scorched from the endless battles, and her eyes were heavy with fatigue. She had fought in this war for years, and each day seemed darker than the last. Friends and allies had fallen beside her, their voices silenced forever. Betrayal had left scars deeper than any wound, and she carried the weight of every loss in her heart. Lysera paused behind a shattered wall, breathing heavily. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. She had just escaped an ambush that had destroyed half her squad. The enemy moved like shadows, striking without warning, leaving destruction in their wake. She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the distant echoes of battle. The once vibrant city was now a maze of ruin, and hope seemed like a memory from a different lifetime. A faint movement caught her attention. Lysera crouched lower, her senses sharp despite her weariness. Through the smoke, she saw a small group of civilians trapped under the debris of a collapsed building. They looked terrified, unable to move. Her heart ached at the sight. She wanted to rush to them, but the enemy patrols were close, and she knew it would be suicide to act alone. A voice reached her ears through the chaos, a human voice, calm and confident. Rumors had spoken of humans as extraordinary fighters, capable of feats that no other species could match. Many in her world believed humans were reckless, but some whispered that they were something else entirely, unexpected, unpredictable, and incredibly brave. Lysera had never met a human before, and now she wondered if the stories were true. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the ridge above the ruins. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with purpose, it was a man. His armor was unlike any she had seen, sleek, practical, and marked with signs of battle, yet untouched by panic. He moved through the enemy lines with an ease that defied logic. Bullets and energy blasts bounced harmlessly off him as he advanced, and he fought with precision that made her heart skip a beat. Lysera watched, almost unable to believe her eyes. The human engaged the enemy soldiers without hesitation, using both strength and strategy. He didn't just charge blindly, he observed, calculated, and struck in the exact moment needed. Each enemy that fell was a testament to his skill and courage. Lysera had fought many battles, but she had never seen anyone move like this. As she watched, the human reached the trapped civilians. With careful, powerful movements, he lifted heavy debris and guided them to safety. No panic, no hesitation, just action. Lysera felt a strange mix of awe and envy. This human, a stranger in her world, had done what she could not. He had turned what seemed impossible into something achievable. Before she could step forward, an enemy patrol noticed her. Energy weapons ignited, sending streaks of light toward her position. She reacted instinctively, diving behind the shattered wall. Her heart raced. For a moment she thought this might be the end, but then the human appeared again. With precise timing, he intercepted the patrol. One moment the soldiers were closing in on her. The next, they were disarmed, incapacitated, or fleeing. The human's movements were fluid, almost like a dance, yet every step was deadly serious. Lysera felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Perhaps she could survive this. Perhaps there was a way forward. When the enemy finally retreated, the human turned toward her. Their eyes met for the first time. He did not speak harshly, nor did he demand obedience. Instead, there was calm in his gaze, a quiet confidence that seemed to say, "I will help if you allow me." Lysera felt a strange relief wash over her. For the first time in months, she believed that she might not be alone in this fight. Lysera stepped out from behind the wall, cautious, but compelled. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking with both exhaustion and awe. "I'm Kyle," the human replied simply, "and I'm here to help." Lysera studied him, noting the way he carried himself. He was strong, yes, but there was also intelligence in his eyes, a strategy, a plan, and most importantly, there was courage, the kind that did not falter even when everything around him burned. She realized then that humans were nothing like the enemy had said. They were not reckless. They were extraordinary. The distant rumble of explosions reminded her that the war was far from over. Her people were still in danger. But now, there was someone beside her who could change the course of events. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lysera felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps survival was possible. Perhaps victory was possible. Together, they moved forward through the ruins. Lysera kept one eye on the path ahead and one eye on Kael. She was cautious, still uncertain if she could trust him completely, but she knew this much. Without his help, her chances of surviving this cruel war were slim. With him, maybe, just maybe there was a future worth fighting for. The sky above Velera remained dark and red, but for the first time Lysera did not feel completely lost. Somewhere in the chaos a human had arrived, and the war-torn world had a chance if only they could survive the next battle. The ruins of the city stretched endlessly, a maze of shattered walls, fallen towers, and broken streets. Smoke curled from the wreckage mixing with the red glow of the sky. Lysera moved cautiously, her senses alert. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every sound might signal an ambush. Yet for the first time in months, she felt a small spark of hope. A human was here and he had saved her. Kael walked beside her, his movement steady and confident. He seemed unaffected by the chaos around them. He didn't rush, yet he never slowed. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings, calculating, observing, predicting. Lysera followed closely, still wary, still unsure how much she could trust. This stranger. She had learned long ago that even allies could betray you and humans were still strangers in her world. "Where are we going?" Lysera asked, her voice quiet, almost swallowed by the distant roar of explosions. "To a safe zone," Kael replied simply. "There are civilians trapped there. We can help them before the enemy notices us." Lysera hesitated. "It's dangerous. The patrols, they are everywhere. You could get hurt." Kael shook his head. "I've faced worse. You've survived this long because you're careful. I'll do the same. Together we stand a chance." Lysera studied him. There was something in his tone, calm, confident, and yet patient. It was not arrogance. It was assurance. Slowly, she felt herself relax, just a little. She followed him through the rubble-strewn streets, keeping low and moving silently as they advanced. They passed scenes that made her stomach turn. Buildings that had once housed families were nothing but piles of steel and concrete. Streets were littered with broken vehicles, twisted and burned. The cries of the wounded echoed through the ruins, haunting her steps. Lysera had seen too much death to be surprised anymore, but seeing a human move through it all with determination inspired her. He did not flinch, did not falter, and he did not give up. "Why are you here?" she asked finally, curiosity pushing past her caution. "I've heard humans fight in wars, but never like this. You don't just fight, you think. You save lives." Kael glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "Humans are like that. We don't always follow the rules of others. We adapt, we improvise, and yes, we try to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Lysera considered his words. She had always thought humans were reckless, dangerous, unpredictable, but Kael was something different. He was not just strong, he was intelligent, strategic, and compassionate. In a world where trust was rare, he was a surprise. They reached the edge of the city where the safe zone was supposed to be. Lysera crouched behind a broken wall, peering through the smoke. Several civilians huddled together, trapped by debris. Panic and fear were written clearly on their faces. Some cried for help. Others whispered prayers that no one could hear. Kael knelt beside her. "We need a plan," he said. "I'll lift the heavier debris. You guide them through the path I create. Move quickly, stay low, and keep calm." Lysera nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and determination. Together they moved forward. Kyle's strength amazed her. He lifted slabs of concrete with ease, creating a narrow path through the rubble. The civilians looked at him with awe, some too scared to speak. Lysera stepped in, helping them steady themselves as they moved. The enemy noticed them almost immediately. Energy weapons flared, sending deadly beams across the ruins. Lysera's heart pounded, but Kale did not hesitate. He used the debris as cover, moving swiftly and striking precisely when needed. Lysera had never seen anyone fight like this. He was a storm and a shield at the same time. One patrol rushed toward them, hoping to cut off the civilians. Kale met them head-on, disarming 2 soldiers before they even realized what had happened. Lysera covered the civilians, guiding them through the narrow path. Together they moved with efficiency and precision, a perfect team formed under fire. When the last civilian was safe, Lysera allowed herself a moment to breathe. She looked at Kyle, who was wiping dust and blood from his armor. "You miss look easy," she said, her voix. The ruins of Valeera stretched on like an endless battlefield. Lysera and Kyle moved cautiously, their steps careful, yet determined. The war had not slowed, and the enemy remained relentless. For Lysera, the days had become a blur of chaos and survival, but now, with Kale at her side, she felt a new possibility. A chance to fight back, not just survive. "Kale, we need to plan," Lysera said, crouching behind a collapsed wall. Her voice was steady, though her eyes scanned every shadow. "If we keep moving blindly, we will not last long. The enemy patrols are stronger than ever." Kale nodded. "Agreed. But planning alone won't work. We need to act. Hit them where they don't expect. Protect civilians. And trust each other." Lysera stiffened at his words. Trust was not something she gave easily. Her people had been betrayed too many times by allies who promised loyalty but delivered treachery. Humans were strangers here. Why should she trust one? "You speak as if this is simple," she said, her tone sharp. "You don't know what it is like to live here, to lose everything day after day." Kyle met her gaze evenly. "I may not know everything," he said calmly, "but I know what it is like to survive impossible odds. And I know how to help. You don't have to do this alone." Lysera looked away, her jaw tight. She had fought alone for so long that relying on someone else felt strange, almost dangerous. Yet she couldn't deny the truth. Kale had saved her life and the lives of others. His strength and intelligence were real. Perhaps this human was different. Perhaps she could risk trusting him. "Fine," she said finally, her voice quieter. "We work together, but we do it my way first. I know the terrain. I know the enemy. You follow my lead." Kale's faint smile showed approval. "I can do that, but I'll offer suggestions when needed. Deal?" Lysera nodded. The agreement was made. Together they began to move through the shattered streets, their alliance uneasy, but growing with each step. The first challenge came quickly. A small group of enemy soldiers appeared ahead, blocking a path that led to a civilian shelter. Lysera signaled Kyle to wait. She had a plan. They would flank the patrol and take them by surprise. Kale followed her instructions precisely, staying low, silent, and alert. When Lysera gave the signal, he moved with speed and skill. The patrol was caught off guard, unable to defend against the combined attack. Lysera's knowledge of the terrain and Kale's strength and agility created a perfect balance. Together, they were unstoppable. After the skirmish, Lysera allowed herself a moment to breathe. "You fight well," she admitted. "Better than I expected." Kyle shrugged. "You've learned well, too. This is teamwork, not a contest. The better we work together, the more lives we save." Lysera considered his words. Teamwork was something she had rarely experienced. Her squad had been small and most of them had fallen. She had survived through caution, skill, and sometimes sheer luck. But now, with Kale, she realized that teamwork could be more powerful than even the strongest individual. As they approached the civilian shelter, the sounds of battle grew louder. Explosions shook the ground, and distant screams echoed through the ruins. Lizara's heart pounded. Civilians were trapped, and the enemy was advancing quickly. She could feel Kale's calm energy beside her, steadying her own nerves. "Follow my lead," she said. "We enter quietly, guide them out, and move fast." Kale nodded. They slipped through a narrow gap in the ruined walls and entered the shelter. The civilians inside looked at them with wide eyes, fear, relief, and hope all mixed in their expressions. Lizara's heart ached for them. She knew the fear they felt, the pain of losing everything. "Quickly now," Lizara urged, guiding the civilians toward the exit. Kale lifted debris and cleared obstacles with strength and precision. The civilians followed, trusting the two strangers to lead them to safety. Outside, the enemy began to notice the movement. Energy blasts flew, striking walls and ground nearby. Lysera and Kale moved in perfect coordination, covering each other and shielding the civilians. Their alliance, though uneasy, had become seamless in action. One enemy soldier managed to break, through their defense aiming directly at a young child. Without hesitation, Kale leaped forward, intercepting the attack. Lysera acted at the same time, striking the soldier down. Together they saved the child and the others from harm. When the last civilian was safe, Lysera allowed herself a small smile. "You were right," she said softly. "This teamwork, it works." Kyle glanced at her. "It always works when you trust your partner, and you just did. That's progress." For the first time in a long while, Lysera felt something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Not the fragile, fleeting hope of survival, but real hope. Hope that she could fight back, that she could protect her people, and that perhaps the war could be changed. The sky above Valeira remained dark, but the ground beneath them was no longer empty of possibility. Lysera realized that Kale was more than a human soldier. He was a symbol of what her people could achieve when they stopped fearing the unknown. As they moved away from the shelter, Kyle spoke. "Lysera, there's more we can do. We can strike at the enemy's supply lines, slow their advances and save even more lives. But it will be dangerous. Are you ready?" Lysera nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "I'm ready. With you by my side, I feel stronger than I have in months. We fight together. We survive together. And maybe we can win." Kale smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "Then let's start. The war doesn't wait, and neither do we." Together, they moved into the ruins, an uneasy alliance bound by trust forged in battle. For Lysera, the war was no longer just about survival. With Kale, it was about hope, courage, and the possibility of victory. And for the first time, she believed that humans, strangers from a distant world, could make a difference in a galaxy that had nearly forgotten the meaning of hope. The red sky above Valeira burned on, but Lysera no longer felt defeated. With Kyle by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The air smelled of smoke and ash as Lysera and Kale moved through the outskirts of the ruined city. The distant sounds of battle had quieted slightly, but the war was never truly still. Every shadow, every flicker of movement could hide an enemy. Lysera's instincts were sharp, but there was a strange tension in her chest. Something didn't feel right. "Stay alert," Lysera whispered. "The enemy may be watching. I've seen traps before, and they are clever." Kyle nodded, scanning the surroundings with his sharp eyes. "I trust your judgment. We watch, and we move carefully. No one gets caught off guard while I'm here." Lysera couldn't help but notice his calm confidence. Even in this dangerous place, he seemed unshakable. She wished she could feel as certain as he did, but her experience told her that danger was always closer than it seemed. They advanced through a narrow street, debris crunching beneath their boots. Lysera felt the hairs on her neck rise. Something was different about this part of the city. The buildings were too silent. The shadows seemed deeper. The air felt heavier, as if the city itself was holding its breath. "Something's wrong," Lysera said, slowing her steps. "We're being watched." Kale's hand went to the side of his armor, ready. "I see it. Stay close." Suddenly, energy beams streaked across the street, striking the walls with deadly force. Lysera dove to the ground, pulling a startled civilian behind her. Kyle moved with lightning speed, deflecting several attacks and neutralizing enemy soldiers. With precise strikes, Lysera realized too late that this was not a random attack. It was a trap. The enemy had studied their movements, anticipated their path, and set a cruel ambush. Soldiers poured from hidden positions, cutting off their escape. Civilians screamed and scrambled for cover, their fear echoing in the ruined streets. Kale fought with incredible skill, holding back the first wave of attackers. "Lysera, move them toward that alley," he shouted, pointing to a narrow passage. Lysera hesitated, knowing it was risky. The alley was tight, and if the enemy pursued, they could be trapped even worse. "Do it," Kyle ordered. "We have no choice." Lysera led the civilians toward the alley, moving as quickly as she dared. Kyle covered their retreat, striking with strength and precision. But the enemy was relentless. Every step forward was met with resistance. Lysera's heart pounded. She had faced danger before, but this felt different, personal. The enemy wanted to break her completely. As they reached the alley, a squad of heavily armed soldiers blocked the exit. Lysera's stomach sank. There was no way through. Kyle fought beside her, but he could only protect them for so long. She realized with a sinking feeling that she might have to make a choice, fight alone or risk everything by trusting Kale completely. The enemy moved closer. Lysera gritted her teeth, ready to fight, when Kale grabbed her arm. "Follow me," he shouted. He pushed a heavy piece of debris toward a nearby wall, creating a temporary shield. Then he pulled her through a hidden gap she had not noticed. They emerged into a small, dimly lit building. Lysera's heart raced as she counted heads. Civilians were safe for the moment, but she knew the enemy would not stop. They were clever, relentless, and cruel. And she had no choice but to face them. Kale examined the building quickly. "We can hold them here for now," he said, "but we need a plan. They'll come in force soon, and this won't last long." Lysera nodded, her mind racing. She had been trapped like this before, and she knew what the enemy was capable of. Fear gnawed at her, but she forced herself to think clearly. Kale's presence. The night was dark over the ruined city, but the enemy was not resting. Lysera crouched in a hidden chamber, her heart heavy with worry. They had escaped the trap, but not without cost. Civilians were safe for now, but the enemy had not forgotten her. She knew they would strike again, and she feared for what might come next. Kale moved silently beside her, checking the barricades and keeping watch. Even after everything they had faced together, he seemed calm and composed, almost unshakable. Lysera envied that calm, wishing she could carry herself with such certainty. "They'll come for me next," Lysera whispered, her voice tight with fear. "They'll find a way to take me, and if they do—" Her words trailed off, but Kyle understood. She feared being alone again, powerless and broken by the cruel war that had taken so much from her. Kyle placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Not while I'm here. I won't let them take you. We'll face this together." Lysera looked into his eyes and saw the truth in them. He meant every word. And for the first time in months, she felt a small spark of hope. Maybe survival was possible, not just for her but for her people. Before she could speak further, a sound came from the street outside. Lysera tensed. The enemy had found them. She peeked through a crack in the barricade and saw several soldiers approaching, moving cautiously as if they knew someone was waiting. Kyle nodded. "Stay here. I'll handle this." Lysera opened her mouth to protest, but he shook his head. "Trust me." With that, Kyle slipped out of the chamber, moving like a shadow through the ruined streets. Lysera's heart pounded as she watched from inside. The enemy was strong, well-trained and ruthless, but Kale did not falter. He moved with intelligence, strength, and precision, neutralizing enemies before they even realized they were in danger. Minutes passed like hours. Lysera's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to join him, to fight alongside him, but she knew Kale's plan required patience and strategy. She had seen his skill in battle, and she trusted him. Then she saw it, a young civilian trapped under fallen debris, a soldier aiming at him. Kale moved in a fluid motion, lifting the debris with ease and knocking the soldier aside. The child ran to safety, and Lysera felt a surge of relief. Kale was not just strong, he was brave and selfless. He risked everything to save even the smallest life. The enemy noticed Kale and attacked him in force. He fought back with incredible skill, every movement calculated, every strike precise. Lysera could hardly believe her eyes. She had seen many soldiers in her life, but none moved like this human. He was a storm in the ruins, unstoppable, fearless, and completely focused. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the enemy was forced to retreat. Kale returned to the chamber, breathing heavily but victorious. Lysera ran to him, her relief and admiration clear in her eyes. You saved them," she said, her voice trembling. "All of them." Kale smiled faintly. "We save who we can, that's all we can do." Lysera shook her head. "No, it's more than that. You risked yourself for them. For me. I've never seen anyone like you." Kale looked at her calmly. "Humans are different. We fight, we protect, and we survive. And sometimes we help those who cannot help themselves. You're stronger than you think, Lysera. But even the strongest need allies." Lysera felt a strange warmth in her chest. For so long she had carried the weight of the war alone. She had been broken by betrayal, loss, and cruelty. But Kale had changed that. He had shown her that someone could stand beside her. Someone could be trusted. Someone could make a difference even in the darkest times. I need your help," Lysera admitted softly. "Not just to fight, but to save my people, to protect what's left of my home. Will you help me?" Kyle's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "I will. We'll do this together." A new determination filled Lysera. She realized that the war, while cruel and relentless, was not unbeatable. With Kale's courage and human ingenuity combined with her knowledge and leadership, they could turn the tide. They could fight back, not just survive. Together, they moved out of the chamber, stepping into the ruins with purpose. Lysera led the way, Kyle beside her, their combined presence striking fear into the enemy whenever they appeared. Civilians watched them pass, hope reflected in their eyes. For the first time, someone dared to believe that the war could be challenged. Lysera noticed how Kale worked, not just as a fighter, but as a leader. He guided, protected, and inspired. He did not seek glory. He did not demand praise. He acted because it was the right thing to do. Lysera had seen many soldiers in her life, but none had the quiet strength, intelligence, and courage of this human. As they moved through the city, Lysera felt her own confidence grow. She gave commands, made decisions, and trusted Kale to support her. Together they were a team, stronger than either could be alone. The war had tried to break her, but with Kale's presence she felt renewed strength, renewed hope, and a renewed sense of purpose. At the end of the night, they paused atop a ruined tower, overlooking the city. The red glow of the sky reflected off the shattered buildings, but beneath it, there was a faint glimmer of possibility. Lysera turned to Kale, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "You've changed everything," she said quietly. "I thought this war would destroy me, but you've reminded me why we fight, why we survive." Kale smiled faintly. "We survive because we fight together, and we fight because it matters. Your people, your home, they're worth it, and so are you." Lysera felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in months. The war was far from over, but she no longer felt alone. With Kale beside her, she had hope, strength, and a chance to turn the tide. The ruined city was silent for a moment, broken only by the distant echoes of battle. But inside Lysera, a fire burned bright. She knew the road ahead would be dangerous, filled with enemies and impossible challenges. But for the first time she believed victory was possible. Not alone, but together, with a human who had risked everything to save her, and a future that was no longer completely dark. The sun rose slowly over Valeera, casting faint golden light over the ruins. Smoke still drifted from the destroyed buildings, and the sound of distant battle echoed across the city. But there was a new energy in the air, a spark of hope that had been absent for months. Lysera stood atop a crumbled tower, looking over her people in the streets that had been so cruelly damaged by the war. Kale stepped beside her, calm and steady as ever. He did not need to speak to understand what she was thinking. The humans' presence had already changed everything. Lysera felt stronger, braver, and more certain. Together they had survived traps, saved lives, and inspired hope in the hearts of her people. "We strike today," Lysera said, her voice firm. "We cannot let the enemy regroup. If we act now, we can take back our city, protect our people, and show them we are not defeated." Kyle nodded. "I've observed their positions, their movements, their weaknesses. We can use that to our advantage, and I'll be with you, every step of the way." The two leaders moved through the ruins, rallying survivors and fighters who had been scattered and disheartened. Lysera's voice carried authority, but Kale's calm confidence inspired courage. Together, they formed a plan that combined strategy, strength, and precision. The humans and aliens worked side by side, a unified force that had rarely existed in Valeera's history. The first confrontation came quickly. The enemy had set up defenses near a central district that had once been a marketplace. Lysera led a small group to flank the enemy while Kale directed another team to disable traps and barriers. Their combined action was swift and decisive. Lysera's heart raced as they engaged the enemy. But unlike before, she did not feel fear. She felt power, purpose, and a strange exhilaration. Every move she made was complemented by Kale's strength and intelligence. Together they were unstoppable. Soldiers who had once seemed invincible fell, unable to counter the coordinated strikes of this unexpected alliance. The civilians watched in awe as Lysera and Kyle moved through the streets. They saw bravery, leadership, and skill that had once been unimaginable. Many whispered among themselves, realizing that the tide of the war might finally be turning. Hope spread like wildfire. As the battle intensified, Lysera faced a group of enemy soldiers attempting to cut off their advance. Kyle noticed immediately and moved to support her. Together they fought with precision, protecting their people while striking fear into their enemies. Every calculated move, every clever strategy, and every act of courage displayed why humans were underestimated in this galaxy. Hours passed, but the enemy began to falter. Their morale broke under the combined strength of Lysera's leadership and Kale's human ingenuity. Slowly, the city began to reclaim itself. Survivors emerged from hiding, joining the fight, inspired by the courage they witnessed. Lysera felt a surge of pride. For the first time, her people were not just surviving, they were fighting back, empowered and determined. After the final confrontation, the streets fell silent. Smoke rose from the last burning structures, but the enemy had been driven back. Lysera stood beside Kale, surveying the city. The devastation was still clear, but there was something more important now: possibility. The people were alive, safe, and ready to rebuild. "You did it," Kale said quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We did it together." Lysera nodded, her eyes bright. "Yes, together. And it's only the beginning. My people, they will recover. They